अच्छी आवाज आ रही बेटा?
Jan Sahab, should we start now? Please unmute yourself.
स्टार्ट करें सर, बिगिन फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग.
अनम्यूट कर ले सर दुबे सर अपने आप को. दुबे सर अपने आप को अनम्यूट करके चालू करें.
So may I request everybody to please mute yourself except Professor Krishna and I. Professor Krishna, sir, you can unmute yourself now. Not at unmute. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So good morning, everyone. It's nice to see such a large gathering this Sunday. As you know, Professor Krishna is the main speaker, and if somebody wants to make an observation after his talk is over, they can do it, and it will be open for question and answer session. I am not going to introduce Professor Krishna because I don't think he needs introduction here. But if somebody wants to get into detail about Professor Krishna, please visit his website, pkrishna.org. Professor Krishna is going to talk to us about inner and outer change. So with these words, I once again want to thank Professor Krishna to accept our invitation to be a part of this group and speak on such an important topic. With these words, I'll request Professor Krishna to start. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dubeji. I have always been part of this group, especially the Indore group. I want to start with two statements of Krishnaji which relate to this topic and which we need to explore in depth in order to understand their significance. One is his statement that the world problem is not separate from the individual problem. And the other is his famous statement that you are the world. By world here, one doesn't mean the universe, one means society. Now, if you look at society, we find so many problems which we are facing. And by and large, governments as well as human beings tend to believe that these problems are external to themselves, that they can therefore be solved by bringing about changes in the structure or the laws or the economy of the country and so on. In short, manipulating the external circumstances to overcome the problems. Now, what Krishnaji pointed out was that all such solutions of the problems are of a temporary nature because they don't eliminate the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem lies in the psyche of human beings. And unless one tackles it there, you will never get permanently rid of these problems. It was quite a striking statement because normally everybody believes that you have to create laws, implement them better, make economic progress, and so on, in order to achieve a peaceful and prosperous society. And he's saying until we transform or we change, there won't be any major fundamental change in society, because the society is, the world is what we are. It's not separate from us. So we need to examine that, whether that is true and in what manner is it true, and what one can do about it. So let me take a few examples to illustrate this. One of the major problems we have is the problem of war. War between nations, between religious groups, between caste groups, between linguistic groups. You may not call it a war, you may call it a riot. But basically, there is division, there is hatred between two groups of human beings. And when that increases beyond a certain level, it leads to physical violence, which we call as war. What has been our effort to solve this problem? After the First World War, they created the League of Nations, hoping that in that League of Nations, they will sit down and discuss together and avoid war. Then came the Second World War. And after the Second World War, we created the United Nations. And the job of the United Nations is that whenever the situation appears to deteriorate to a point where it might result in a war, they need to intensify their diplomatic activity and try to create an agreement whereby that war is avoided. Constantly, this is being done, but constantly new situations of war erupt. If you look at human history, you will see that over the last 3,000 years or so, which is the period over which we have some knowledge of history, human beings have always been at war with each other. And they are still at war. So the situation has really not changed. Because these external efforts at agreement are not the real cause of war. The real cause of war lies in our psyche. So we need to examine that, and if you don't bring about that change in attitude of the human beings, you will go on repeating the same situation over and over again, as we have seen in India, in Kashmir, and in the Middle East, between Israel and the Arabs, and between blacks and whites in America, and so on. You can multiply the examples. But basically, there is this process of grouping together with like-minded people and identifying with a particular group, which divides you from the other group of people who are identified with another ideology or another country or another race or another caste. So that creates this psychological division between us and them, a sort of artificial division which our mind creates. And unless we can free our mind of this process by which the division occurs, it will keep on occurring. Because you don't need too much. You just need a difference of opinion or a difference of looks or of dress or of manner of worship or wealth to bring about division. So unless we can take a deeper understanding of how division arises and free our mind of that process of division, which is what is an inner change in the human being, you will keep on recurring with the problems and keep on solving them also. So that all these solutions which we try to bring about externally act like aspirin. They don't cure the disease, but they relieve the headache to some extent temporarily. And it's not intelligent to keep on having headaches and never examine the underlying cause of those headaches so that you can cure the disease underlying that. The cure of the disease is referred to here as the inner change. And the outer circumstances, which may be controlled or changed, is the aspirin with which you can temporarily resolve one particular problem which comes. It's like resolving one particular headache. So that is the state in which we find ourselves. Now, how does this division arise? How do we understand that? Because we call it a war only when actually tanks roll, aeroplanes bomb, armies move and start killing. We call it a war. Before that, we don't call it a war. But much before that, there is already psychological division and hatred in the hearts of the people in the two groups. The physical warfare is merely an extreme manifestation of that psychological division. So unless we can overcome this psychological division by understanding what it is and freeing our mind of it, these divisions keep recurring again and again. It begins with noticing a difference, that the other people are different from me. But not all differences create division. Difference is a very natural thing. No two trees are identical. No two leaves of a tree are identical. No two human beings are identical, either in their looks or in their knowledge or in their food, etc., or property. So difference is quite a natural thing. And sometimes we notice differences as differences, but at other times, differences create division. So one has to understand this. When does a difference create a division? And when are we able to look at a division merely a difference as merely a difference without creating division? Division comes when there is hatred, when there is condemnation, etc. So you will notice that it comes from, first of all, identification. Identification with the nation, which is called patriotism, or with your language, or religion, or caste, or even family, and ultimately even your own body and your own self. So this is a whole process. But we have not had a war between tall people and short people, though they are different from each other. Because tall people don't group together against short people. So one has to understand this. When does a difference convert into a division and why? If you examine that or explore that, you will find that the mind associates certain values and judges, measures and judges, which creates like and dislike. And you like people with similar views, with similar beliefs, with similar habits, because you feel more secure among them. And you are suspicious of people who are dissimilar from you, particularly if they constitute another group. But not all groups create division. A group of teachers in a school, a group of workers in a hospital, they are all cooperating and working together. So it's not just groupism. There are innocent groups, which are functional groups, and there are ideological groups. It is these ideological groups which create division and ultimately war. So one has to question, why does one identify oneself with a particular idea, ideal, or nation to such an extent that the mind functions like a lawyer defending the me and the mine and opposing any other group, or disliking others and treating others as competitors and not as brothers. Unless we can free our mind of this process, which creates division in our individual life also, between husband and wife, between father and son, between one family and another family, it's the same problem. And that's how I understand Krishnaji's statement that the world problem is not separate from the individual problem. Another example which I would like to take is that of crime. What has been our response to crime in society? The response has been to create a police force, to have laws, prisons, courts and judges, and put the guilty into prison, punish them, and so on. This has been going on for centuries, but crime has not ended, because the root cause of crime lies in the psyche of man. There is greed, there is hatred, there is enmity, and if you don't get rid of this violence within consciousness, then it will inevitably manifest in a number of different ways, both in your personal life and in society. So it's not different. And our society is the way it is because we are the way we are, which is what it means you are the world. But that also means that we are responsible for everything that is happening in the world. We think that only the people of Israel and the Arabs are responsible for what's going on there, or only the Kashmiris are responsible for what is happening in Kashmir. And Krishnaji is saying, no, all of you are responsible for every crime, for every division in the world. When Gandhiji was murdered in 1948, 30th January, somebody's thing is not muted. Duveji, there is a lot of disturbance because someone's microphone is not muted. Can you ask them to mute it? Sushil? Now it's all right. So, Krishnaji was giving a talk in Bombay, and someone asked a question. Who was responsible for the murder of Gandhi? He gave a longish reply, which you can see in the collected works. It was 1948. Dubeji, there's too much disturbance.
माहेश्वरी जी के यहाँ से डिस्टर्बेंस आ रहा है. प्रकाश माहेश्वरी जी.
No, Maheshwari has come, but
हाँ, माहेश्वरी has come, but उसका माइक बंद चालू हो रहा है, उनको बोलना पड़ेगा थोड़ा. माहेश्वरी जी अपना
अब बंद हो
म्यूट
गया.
कर लीजिए.
म्यूट कर दिया.
ओके.
So Krishnaji said, each one of you who is divided from his fellow man on the basis of religion, on the basis of language, on the basis of caste, is responsible for that murder. Of course, society considers that the man who pulled the trigger and killed Gandhi was responsible. So he was caught hold of, and the court ordered his execution, and he was hanged. But the deeper question is, that man was not born a murderer. He grew up in this society, and he imbibed the values which he saw around him. A child is educated by what he sees going on around him. His mind gets conditioned by what's going on in society. So, what created Godse? What made him a murderer? The fact that there is this division between religions, there is hatred in society between Hindus and Muslims. And he grew up and got infected with all this from society. And ultimately that led him to kill Gandhi, thinking that he is really doing something protective for his own community. All terrorism is also born like that. And all this creates the greatest insecurity in society. So one identifies thinking that identification gives me security, but that's an illusion. Actually, it leads to the greatest insecurity if you see with a longer vision. This long vision is wisdom, and the short vision is selfishness, self-centeredness, the immediate security, search for immediate security. So unless one has a long vision and lives with a long vision, which is wisdom, you will never get rid of these problems. Look at the domination of men over women, or in general of the powerful people over the powerless people, whether it is power difference is political or it is monetary. The rich can exploit the poor, and the people with political power exploit those without that power. Now, all knowledge also gives power. Ability is power. So you can't do away with power. But have we understood our relationship with power? Is power meant for dominating and exploiting others around us and benefiting ourselves? Or is power meant to discharge one's responsibilities? When a minister or a government official uses his power to build his own house and acquire money under the table, we call him corrupt. When he uses it to discharge his responsibilities, we consider that to be the right use of power. Isn't that true for all power, including knowledge? That it is meant to serve, to protect, to do the right thing. And when it is used for selfish ends, it becomes corruption. So Krishna said, ego is corruption. If you are angry, you are corrupt. Because the source of corruption lies in the ego being self-centered action. You're doing that action not thinking of the whole, but only thinking of your own benefit. And that is corruption. Unless whatever problem you investigate deeply, you will find that it originates from this ego process, which is the identification, which is self-centeredness, and so on. So the wisdom lies in freeing oneself of this process. And wisdom doesn't come through knowledge or through ideas. It doesn't come by following or imitating. It comes from self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is not knowledge at all. It is that which you have clearly understood through your own perception, not just a concept, which means one has to engage in discerning what is true and what is false. Otherwise, one lives with a lot of false notions, which are also termed as illusions. And from those illusions, one acts. And that is the deeper source of the problems. So to get rid of that, one needs to have a learning mind. Learning not as knowledge or ideas or even influence or conditioning, but learning which is discernment of what is true and what is false. It begins with knowing that you really don't know the truth, but you are anxious to know it because you have understood that the conditioning which you have obtained through society is not necessarily true. It can have a lot of evil in it. It can also have a lot of good notions in it. Unless you examine and free yourself of the evil in it, your mind is not free. And you are contributing to the chaos in society. So if one looks at the problem of casteism in India, somebody divided society into 4 different castes: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Shudras, and Vaishyas. It may have started with a very different motive, but what it has become today in society is the reality with which it functions. It's a kind of infection. A child is born, is neither has a religion nor does he have a caste. All that is imposed on him. And then through propaganda, his mind is conditioned into those ideas of that caste or that religion. And that creates the division between him and people of another religion who have been similarly conditioned in the other religion and other society. So how will this problem end? If we accept everything that we are seeing around us and our conditioning and don't question it, nothing will change. It becomes inertia. We call it tradition, but blindly to follow tradition, in the Indian context, it would mean you follow casteism, you follow dowry, you follow sati, and so on, because you don't question the domination of man over woman. All that has been part of conditioning. The idea of success, that in life you must go on increasing ability, that people of a greater ability are superior to people of lower ability. And therefore, you give greater value to efficiency rather than goodness, to ability rather than love. And so one has created that kind of society. And whatever problems we are seeing are a result of that kind of society. Competition means my brother is not my friend, he's my rival. So rivalry is taught to us right from childhood. You must stand first. You're jealous of the other boy who gets the attention because he stands first, and so on. So that is the problem. And it will never solve unless there is a change in attitude which comes about through this deeper understanding. And that deeper understanding requires a learning mind, not a knowing mind. So Krishnaji wanted to change education. He said education must concern itself not with conforming to society, not helping students to conform to society, but help them to question society intelligently and put all these questions into their mind. This inquiry is a religious inquiry, which is non-denominational. It is needed by the Muslim and the Christian and the atheist and the Hindu, everyone. And yet it is the very center, essence of all religion, because without wisdom, it always goes wrong, whichever religion you may be in. So what we call religion is not religion at all. It's a superficial performance of certain rituals and prayers and so on. You're not really growing in understanding life or relationships or wisdom. And education, as is set up mostly through society, is not concerned with self-knowledge at all. It takes all this for granted and just wants to create ability to earn a living, and it considers that the person who is efficient, who can rise to the top, is what the education process needs to produce. It's a purely factory model. which uses children in society as raw material, fashions them for 14 years in order that they will to get the work done and the economy going in the country, which means it's a completely heartless way of relating with the children of our society. Because you don't care whether he will be happy, what his relationships will be, whether he'll be a creative individual. You just want him to be an engineer or a doctor and to earn money, acquire power. So that whole vision is a mistaken vision. And within that vision, you may take any steps. It all goes wrong when the vision is wrong. So that was Krishnaji's teaching, that without the inner change, outer change has very little significance. Marxists and Russians and communists, they thought they can change man by changing the external circumstances and by controlling. And they brought about severe control. People couldn't have property. You were made more or less have equal amount of wealth. The differences in wealth was reduced and so on. And yet, violence could not be eliminated. It just took the shape of state violence. And there was tremendous fear and suppression. So the external change never brings about the inner change. You cannot get the inner change without coming upon wisdom. And you cannot come upon wisdom if you just imitate or follow society. So he said, education must be changed in order to create this inquiry. And this inquiring, learning mind is the true religious mind. It will bring about transformation in the individual and therefore in society. But if you are in a hurry, you say, well, this will take a very long time, which is true. Therefore, you are only solving the immediate problem. Then you do whatever we are doing in society and you see the consequences of it. Crime has not ended. You can improve your police force and so on, but there is no country in which crime has ended. So he said some people must concern themselves with the transformation of consciousness and work towards it. Because by and large, people are working only to change the outer. And that is a very superficial change. In the case of the individual himself also, just controlling your temper, controlling your behavior, though it may be necessary, is not transformation of consciousness, is not wisdom. It creates a conflict between what you are and what you think you should be. And you are using violence with yourself to force yourself in a particular direction. And Krishnamurti pointed out that that creates tremendous conflict within the mind of the individual. That's not a religious life. So his famous statement was, virtue cannot be practiced. It is a state of being, a state of consciousness. And unless you come upon that consciousness, you are really not virtuous. You can become vegetarian, but you may be extremely cruel and still be vegetarian. So just one habit which you acquire and therefore you feel that you are now superior to other people is not a solution. Without this deeper understanding, there is no possibility of a permanent change or solution. You can go on controlling, go on modifying, but violence will erupt in another way because it's there in your consciousness and therefore it will manifest itself. Which way it manifests is what you control. But the violence in your consciousness does not go away by controlling it. It goes away when you understand your relationships with nature, with other people, with power, and so on, which is all part of self-knowledge. There is another aspect I want to touch on. In every activity in life, there is the technique to be learned, and there is also a spirit, which is the state of consciousness in which you should be participating in that activity. The former you can learn from a teacher or from a book or by practicing. The latter is change of consciousness, requires a deeper understanding of consciousness. Let me illustrate this point with a few examples. Take religion. There are the external rituals, prayer, the belief and the ideas of God, about God, which are the form of religion. The spirit of religion is the spirit of love, non-violence, and compassion. If the spirit is not there, the external performance of religion is hollow, superficial. The external performances don't bring about the inner change. But if the inner change is there, it will bring about change in the external. Take art. You can learn the technique of painting or of music or of literature. But if you don't have a sense of beauty, what are you expressing? And that sense of beauty is a sensitivity, which is the main thing in art, the spirit of art. In science, there is the method, the scientific method, but there is also the scientific spirit. And if you don't have the scientific spirit, the scientific method is very superficial. It'll give you, but it'll bring you power, and you will use that to make nuclear bombs and so on and kill. But the scientific spirit is different. In the art of government, there is the external form of government. Democracy is considered a superior form of government, but by democracy we mean separation of the judiciary from the executive, election every 4 or 5 years of representatives from the public by voting, freedom of the press, which informs people, and so on. These pillars of democracy are all there in India and also in the US. Why does democracy not work in that way? Because the spirit of democracy is missing. The spirit of democracy is a spirit of friendship. It's a spirit of mutual respect, of humility. saying none of us really knows what is the best way to go forward. Let's sit down, discuss, listen to each other's views, thereby educate ourselves. And when we have done so, let us decide on a course of action. If various proposals come, let's vote and decide which course to adopt. But when we decide, we will all contribute to the success of that decision. And if problems arise, we will again sit down, confer. The opposition are not our enemies. They are friends with a difference of opinion. That's the spirit of democracy. Because it's not there, you have just witnessed what happened in America right now. The spirit of democracy is not there. The Democrats feel separate from the Republicans. There is a situation almost as bad as the situation of Hindus and Muslims in India, which led to the partition of the country, which was no solution either. If that same British policy were to be applied to America today, the solution would be that you divide that country into two parts, the Democrats and the Republicans. That's not a solution. So there are deeper issues. The spirit of democracy is more important than the form of democracy. And that spirit requires a transformation of consciousness, which is a deeper understanding of all our relationships with each other, with nature, with ideas, with knowledge, with power, with children, everything. And that understanding we are not transmitting through education. Therefore, we ourselves are responsible for the kind of human beings we are generating in our society. And that in turn is responsible for the state of our society. Instead of blaming some particular individuals, which is only a way of feeling superior and not accepting this total responsibility for what is happening in our society. It is important to engage in this process of learning for ourselves and bringing about a transformation of consciousness, which is what is the inner change. Without the inner change, the outer change is extremely superficial. You can multiply the examples. I have just given a few. I think I'll end it here, and if you have questions, I'll be glad to discuss.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very simply and clearly put. We are all thankful. Gerard, welcome to this group. Are you able to hear me? Please unmute yourself. Unmute. Unmute.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome,
Okay.
welcome to this group. Would you like to say something? Would you like to make an observation?
I would like to thank Professor Krishna and all of you. I'm very happy to see you again.
How are you, Gerard?
Oh,
Are you in France?
yes, I am in France. I am in the middle of the big mess, you know, because of America, because of pandemia, because of all that.
I know.
So I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk.
You're welcome.
You are very, very much to the point. And I would like you, how do you think that the individual, the person, the you and me, how do you think we can really change? Because all what you described is very, very true, but we seem to be stuck in that situation of being conflictual human beings, of being an Hindu or French or a German. We are stuck in that identity. How do you think that we can have a spirit, a universal spirit, a spirit of learning, which is not the movement of the me? How do you think that? How do you think is it possible? Because Krishnamurti, it seems to me that Krishnamurti has always invited this universal mind to come to the surface, to come to being, and we are all the time stuck in the identified mind of the me as a French, me as a German, me as a man, me as a woman, and so on. How do you think this is possible? That is my question.
Yeah. I think Krishnaji showed a way out, and I agree with that. It's not a simple way, but it's an approach. Every time you experience anger or hatred or jealousy or rivalry or hurt and so on, any of the negative emotions, it is important not to just suppress it or escape from it, but to use it as an opportunity to learn about oneself. That's what the learning mind is about. Not about coping with the pain and the hurt or the anger, not about controlling it, which may be necessary. I am not saying that if you feel like beating up your neighbor, you should go and beat him up. No, but it's not enough to control yourself, because you must then ask yourself a deeper question: why did I need to control myself? And that inquiry will take you deeper, provided you are really sincere about this learning. Unfortunately, we have not been seriously encouraged into this learning. We have been encouraged into learning about the external world, the history, the geography, the science, the universe, and all that. So the mind has been directed outwards all the time through our education. And it finds it implicitly in our conditioning. It is there that knowledge will solve this problem. And Krishnaji is saying, no, that knowledge will never solve that problem, however much knowledge you may acquire. Because truth is not a correct idea. Truth is a perception. And to come upon perception is very different from an idea or an explanation. Let me give an example of what is the difference between a perception and an idea. Suppose a man was blind from birth. How would you explain to him what you mean by color? You may talk to him about wavelength. You may talk to him about the spectrum. You may say that, fire looks red and leaves are green and so on. None of that will give him the perception of color, what you mean by color. Unless his eyes are operated and he sees for himself what color is, he has no way of arriving at what color is. So when Krishnaji talks about the awakening of intelligence, he's talking about opening the eyes of a blind person. And we are all blind. Maybe not blind in all areas, but we all have some areas in which our mind is clear, and there are other areas in which our mind is confused and is blind. So he suggested that this learning mind is a mind in dialogue. It doesn't take sides with an opinion. It remains with the question and explores the question, which we can do jointly in a dialogue. But ultimately, it's not that you come to an agreement in dialogue. That has no value. A conclusion in dialogue has no value. It has to go to the level of perception. You have to perceive what is true and what is false. Not just agree that, yes, this is true, that is false. That we do in science and through logic and so on. You can say what is true and what is false, or what is logical and what is illogical, and so on. It has a certain superficial value, which we all know because we are educated, but it doesn't create perception. So once you know that I am like that blind man, I don't know what the truth is, that creates true humility. And you listen to other views, or to the explanation of somebody else, or to Krishnamurti, without arguments, and use it for perceiving the truth in your own life. That's the only way an actual transformation of consciousness is possible. Because if you don't have the truth, you may have all kinds of ideas about that truth. It does not transform consciousness. It just transforms the mind. The mind, instead of one set of ideas, can acquire another set of ideas. But no set of ideas will free you from jealousy, from anger, from insensitivity, and so on. So it may be difficult, Gerard, but I don't see any other way of doing it. So I agree with Krishnaji that he said we have been trained into calling some negative emotion as unfortunate and suppressing it or eliminating it or escaping from it. Instead, treat it like a jewel. It's a call for you to understand yourself and use it. From where did it arise in me? That is the question. And don't answer that question with ideas or with knowledge and so on. Explore that in your life, in your relationships. He said, unless religion is coupled in this way with daily life, it becomes an escape. It's not really religion at all. When it is connected with daily life, only then it really can bring about transformation. So I am merely, I'm telling you what I have learned from Krishnaji. I'm not saying it's easy. We are all struggling.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Harshad bhai, you want to say something?
Yes. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, yes.
Okay. It seems to me that the teachings of Krishnaji is addressed to the individual, and because the society has not changed over thousands of years, but some few people, if they are deeply interested, then there is a possibility of coming to a new dimension, which Krishnaji calls awareness. But for that, a person needs to be alone first, and to be alone is very frightening for most people. And because our habitual mind, it doesn't want to be quiet and turn the attention inward instead of picking up some book and reading even Krishnaji book. So instead of going in the outer to gather knowledge, whether it is knowledge of science or of psychology, because even psychology may be only just gathering lots of information. But when a person is able to be alone and very curious and can turn the attention inward and can look not through words but non-verbal looking, in that there is some real learning happens. And so this is maybe it's the most difficult thing, to be alone, to be silent, curious, and look inward and see what are these thoughts coming, from where does it come, you know. So that kind of curiosity, when it comes in our schools, in people, then there is a possibility of coming to this new dimension, which in that any problem coming into existence, any problem of psychological nature can be seen at its root. The moment it comes out, this inward looking, non-verbal, look at it and the problem dissolved. So in Krishnaji's language, in the light of awareness, all problems created by thinking are dissolved. You know, so that dimension has not been tried, I think, in our school, because in the schools also people are busy from morning to evening gathering too much knowledge. So that is, I think, maybe it's the most difficult thing. Okay, I just made a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have just described what the learning mind is. Quite right.
We can take questions now. Anybody? Yes, Mr. Verma. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Then we'll go to Mr. Anand. Anandji, unmute.
Is it audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have just two basic questions.
Yes.
One is regarding absolute stillness, which is a prerequisite to see things as they are. Absolute stillness of the mind, which has been emphasized time and again. And then how such a mind responds to any stimuli from so-called outside or inside. A still mind, absolute still mind. Another basic question is, we talked about discernment. How proper discernment is possible with a conditioned mind? We all are conditioned in one way or the other. We are not absolutely, we are very much conditioned. We know, all of us. So discernment or vivek buddhi, what you may call, how is it possible? Because we say we should be able to see true as true, false as false in any situation. So this is really a difficult proposition. So these two basic questions. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. The conditioning does not completely block all awareness.
Okay.
We have innately the qualities of awareness, of intelligence, the capacity for love, for compassion. Nature has put that. We don't create that either through education or through knowledge. If we don't destroy it, then they flower, they function. In other words, love has no cause. It is there in human consciousness. But hatred has a cause. And hatred destroys love. So one has to find out from where the hatred is arising and end it. When hatred ends, then love will flower. You don't have to willfully try to increase love. You can't. Or compassion, or awareness. They are innately there. Now, if it's a very strong conditioning, it does block you very strongly. But if you realize that conditioning blocks you, it does not remain so strong. It becomes weak. There are chinks, there are windows that develop through which you can perceive. And some examples are that, historical examples are that of Emperor Ashoka. The Emperor Ashoka was one of the most cruel kings in history. It's after the Kalinga War that in spite of his conditioning and in spite of all cruelty within him and so on, a window opened and he could see the fallacy of war. And thereafter, he became a kind king, became a follower of the Buddha or his teaching, and eschewed violence, and is considered to be one of the best kings that was there for nearly 15 or 20 years after that. So if a man like Ashoka, who was heavily conditioned into victory, into war, and so on, could see, if a man like Jesus, who was brought up as a Jew, who was taught that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is the right behavior, if he could come upon it, free himself of the past, and come upon a new this thing that no, don't retaliate hatred or violence with violence and hatred. If Krishnamurti was conditioned into theosophy, but could come out of that and say that all these concepts of root race and dependence on the masters and so on is not necessary. You have to come, and brought something new into it. These are examples that conditioning does not completely eliminate the capacity for perception. But are you open to perception, or are you so attached to your conditioning and deriving so much power and strength? And so your objective is not learning, your objective is strength and power. You can see that in the politicians around you and so on, how that is blocking them from seeing the truth. And they get importance out of that and so on, and that's what they want. They don't want the truth. So humility is the first requirement. If you think you know, and you are going ahead ambitiously with that, then you are destroying your own capacity for awareness. So there also, ultimately, we ourselves are responsible. And logically, though Krishnaji never said it that way, I want to give you as a scientist, a question. These are the eternal truths, no? The Buddha has talked about them, the Upanishads have talked about them, the Jesus talked about them, and so on, and now Krishnamurti and Ramana and so on have talked about it. And truth is something that is actual. It exists. So it's there now, around us. We have the organs of perception. What is preventing me from perceiving that truth? Is society coming in between? Is my education coming in between? Is my neighbor blocking me? Or it's only Krishna who is blocking Krishna's perception? So when you take responsibility for your learning and you realize that you yourself are the block, the barriers are within you, they are not created from outside. That is the first step, that you have a learning mind. Then you have a learning mind. Otherwise, you have a mind that is all the time finding explanations as to why this happened, why that man did this and that man did this. You are apportioning blame on other people for what you are, your condition is. So, unfortunately, not many of us have been educated into a learning mind. And that's the greatest tragedy. To live with a learning mind, which doesn't mean you will come upon realization or what, where, but without it you won't. That is for guaranteed. But with it, how far you will be able to go, it's up to you. Up to you. So if Ashoka could go there, so you have to question. So if Ashoka could get there, why am I blocked? My conditioning is not something worse than what his conditioning was. Yeah. And your first question was about awareness. I have forgotten.
Absolute stillness.
Yeah. No, by that stillness is only meant that your mind is chattering. It is distracted all the time and diverted. Attention is diverted. It is not able to pay attention to what is. So that is the mind. It's my own mind which is destroying the stillness. So I have to find out the causes which destroy stillness. You can't create stillness. You can try to, but that will be temporary. You can sit in silence in Padmasana and go into a temple and so on, or into nature. Nice, you will come, but the silence will be destroyed for the same reason it's destroyed every day, because unless those causes of disorder are handled, the silence will get destroyed. So externally induced silence has very little significance. And that reminds me of a dialogue between Scott Forbes and Krishnamurti. He had asked Krishnamurti to create a silent room in the study center at Brockwood. So Scott asked him, sir, what is this silent room? What is its purpose? When we go and sit there, will it bring silence? He said, no, you take silence to the room. That means you have permission to enter the room only silence. Not the other way around, not that the room will create the silence. So he was very clear about that we ourselves are responsible for destroying the silence, and not externally induced silence has very little significance. I don't say it has no significance. It's nice, go and sit there and so on. But if you don't have a learning mind, you won't learn.
Yes, yes.
You can do all vipassana, everything. If you don't have a learning mind, you won't learn.
What
Yes,
troubled me was this word absolute, actually. What triggered me was this word absolute.
Yeah, that means he came upon that kind of mind. Doesn't mean I have that kind of mind, no? So I consider that a man like Krishnamurti is evidence of the potential that is possible for every human being. Okay, doesn't miss. You can't imitate that. You can't be Krishnamurti. I can't be Krishnamurti.
Mill pond. He talked the mill pond.
Yeah, the mill and the mill pond. Yeah.
yes. Yes, Anandji, please go ahead. Mr. Anand, yeah. Then we'll go to Tarun and Vijay and then Clemis.
So it's just an observation. We always seem to be emphasizing so much the division between man and man, the killings which are taking place, the nationality, caste, race, creed, and things like that. How do I understand that man is only a small part of life? But I emphasize all the time on man and man's relationship. Krishnamurti says, if you have no relationship with the living things of the earth, or the earth for that matter, you have no relationship with humanity, with human beings. But I don't seem to understand that all the time I'm talking about me, my killings and my relationship, and my love, my understanding. How is it?
Yeah,
That's my question, sir. That's my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The thing is, nature is in order. It is not creating the disorder. We human beings are creating the disorder. The climate change is also created by us. The ecological catastrophes are also created by us. All these wars are created by us. No animal, not even the tiger or the wolf, have ever created war. So we are the problem. And that's why we discuss about ourselves. And what will you discuss about the tree? It's fine. It's not creating any problem. It is part of the harmony of nature. But yes, if you could learn from nature, because you could understand that you are part of nature and nature is in order, and why am I not in order? Then nature can be a great teacher. And people like Thoreau and Krishnamurti and so on learned a tremendous amount from nature, but it requires a sensitivity to nature, which unfortunately our education kills it. Our education, I don't mean only what happens in college and school, but also in society in general. We kill the sensitivity to nature. Children have that sensitivity innately, but we destroy it by all the time saying, don't waste your time, do this, you have to achieve this, and so on. So he is not free to watch a tree or a flower and so on. It is in contact with nature that sensitivity develops. So it's one of the mainstays or main pillars of education in a Krishnamurti school. And that's why Krishnamurti schools are all located in places of great natural beauty and so on, not just because it is pleasant, but because when you grow up with a mountain or a river or trees and birds and animals, it does create a certain sensitivity, or at least provides a ground for you to come upon sensitivity. You may still not come upon it. That's different. If you are very ambitious, you don't watch the river. You're not seeing the river. You're going on with your mathematics or whatever.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tarun Kumar, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, sir, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Sir, actually, as you said, perception supersedes ideas and knowledge. But
Yes.
is perception is complete without having any knowledge and idea? And in my opinion, whatever conditioning, whether conditioning will prevail or awareness will prevail, as both are present. It depends on your focus, which we determine by our choice, interest, and preferences given to them. To whom you focus, when you focus, and how you focus, etc., are the freedom rewarded to us. And this leads to either problem or transformation.
Yes, I would agree with what you are saying, because the capacity for love is innately there. If you get taken up with ambition and ego activity, then it has very little scope to function. But if you watch yourself, even the ambitious man has certain activities where he is not ambitious, where he is functioning just with love or for the joy of it. Maybe in his game of tennis, or maybe in the garden where he grows a flower, or maybe in relating with neighbor's child. He's not ambitious. So it's not that the ego is all the time blocking you, but the mind gives tremendous importance to the achievements of the ego. And therefore the ego becomes dominant. That's the problem. Otherwise, a little bit of ego is there in everybody. I remember a dialogue which Krishnaji conducted in Rajghat in the 1980s, where he started with this question: sir, where does the self begin and where does the self end and the other begin? So he didn't deny the existence of the self. After all, I had to look after this body and care for it and take a bath and all that. I had to do certain things to maintain this body. If you call all that also as ego, so all that is just responsibility towards your body. But if all the time you are thinking only in terms of pleasure and in achievement and so on, then there is no scope. And your love also will be, you will love those who help you in your achievement. So it is not love at all. So I don't think that the ego completely blocks you, but the fact that you give tremendous importance to the achievements of the ego. So I agree that it's entirely our own responsibility. It's not that I can't blame my conditioning for blocking me. I am giving tremendous importance to conditioning, which if I see that that's an illusion, then the conditioning gets put in has a small place in one's life. Just the color of your skin and the shape of your body has a certain place in your life. Conditioning also has a certain place in your life. I like sambar because I was born in South India. It's not against any other food. So it doesn't create any. There is a lot of innocent conditioning too. Or not, conditioning should not become a bad word because everybody has conditioning, including Krishna. Not that he was not conditioned, but the conditioning didn't dominate in his consciousness. That's what I would say. He had a personality. We all have a personality. It's as factual as the skin of your color of your skin. But why does it become so important that I was born in India and Indians are the greatest and our culture is the highest, etc., etc.? You build up on it, no? I am an Indian. So you have to distinguish between what is love of the country and what is patriotism. It's the patriotism that is egoistic. Love of the country is not egoistic. You love the Himalayas, you love the Ganga, you love the trees, whatever are around you, the land in India, you're grown up with it. That doesn't create hatred for another land or another river. But when you give tremendous importance to it and say, they see, we, our people, what is our people? What have you contributed to that? So it's all very stupid, but ego is stupid.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vijay K, please ask your question.
Good morning, Krishnaji.
Good morning.
Sir, I have two observations and a query on the same. We talked about democracy, the spirit of democracy.
Yes.
We understood that patriotism is an egoistic pursuit, and that identification is the one that is creating conflict. Right, sir?
Yes, yes.
No? Yeah. And how, the question is this, sir, how does one come to the spirit of democracy? Now, is it becoming a process? If it is becoming a process, then it also gets into an identification mode. It also catches a fundamentalism of a different kind, probably a subtle kind, but a different kind. This is one thing, sir. The second thing that I recollect having heard in Krishnaji's dialogues is where Krishnaji says that once you are in total awareness of the conflict of mankind, immediately there's a transformation that takes place. Now, can you take us into this a little bit, sir?
Yes, a little bit, not whole bit.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. He laid the stress on watching with a learning mind. So when you watch that, okay, we are supposed to be in a democratic society, and you see democracy the way it is functioning around you, all the corruption, all the power, the thing, and etc. I don't have to describe all that. Then you begin to question that, is this really democracy? And what's so great about democracy? And you will discover that it is the self-centeredness and the ego that destroys the democratic spirit. So you can learn about democracy, that democracy is not just this form, this pride in freedom of the press, and it's all right. Those tenets are better than other tenets of dictatorship and so on. But the spirit of democracy, as I described it, without coming upon that, it's not a true democracy. And you have just seen in the last 1 week what has happened in America, supposed to be the pinnacle of democracy in the world. And what a shame what took place there. Just because one man who becomes president doesn't have that kind of spirit of democracy at all the form of democracy has no significance. It's laid aside. Now, that was just an example I gave, but it applies also to many other things in our life. You have an examination system, but you cheat. Why do you cheat? Because you don't really have faith in that system. You don't believe in that system. Ultimately, when it comes to profit for yourself, you're willing to bend that system. You have a system of family. It involves certain discipline, it involves certain understanding, and so on. But you cheat. You go outside. Wherever you cheat, in every activity, you will find that it is this selfish motive that enables you to cheat the very system which you have enjoined. So we become hypocrites, no? You talk about a system, but you don't really have the spirit of that system. You don't really believe in it. And that is the cause of all our misery. So ultimately, it is this ego process, which means selfishness, which is at the root of it all. Now, if you say by nature, man is selfish, animals are also selfish, you are seeking an explanation for continuation of selfishness.
Thank you, sir. Clemis, please go ahead. Clemis and then Savitaji, the last question.
Yeah. Good morning, Professor Krishna.
Good morning, Clemis. Nice of you to come.
Thank you. So I don't really have a question. I just want to make an observation. And I hope it is not misunderstood. But you see, you said that Krishnamurti got free from philosophy conditioning.
Yes.
I just would like to point out that theosophy cannot really condition. What conditions are the beliefs that people create? Because theosophy itself means wisdom. And wisdom is something that can never condition anybody. So I don't feel that Krishnamurti got free from any conditioning. I don't think he ever entered into that, in the belief that people hold or held. And so anything that we believe in conditions the mind. So any belief will condition the mind. And if we make Krishnamurti's teachings into belief, they also will condition the mind.
Of course.
So that was just
yes, but I got your question, Clemis, and thank you for pointing this out. Theosophy is the quest for truth and wisdom at the essence. So when I said he was conditioned into theosophy, it was not a precise statement. He was conditioned into the beliefs which certain theosophical leaders had at that time, namely Leadbeater and Annie Besant, and maybe some of it came also from Blavatsky and so on. Now, if you read the history of Krishnamurti's development, you do find that in the beginning, till 1922 or so, which means till he was 27 years of age, he is accepting the masters and the direction from the masters and following them, and regarding Leadbeater and Mrs. Besant as teachers, and saying to people, you must follow them and we must be like them and so on. All of which he later on repudiated. So it is after the death of Nitya, then in 1922 and 25, the big changes happened in his life. And then thereafter, he started questioning. And from there till 1930, 32, in fact, he's constantly changing. He's observing, he's questioning, he's changing. He gives up the masters, dependence on the masters. Then he gives up the idea of a path. And then the idea of certain root race and so on, all those things. So in the beginning, his mind was, and why not? Yeah, all children get conditioned. So he also grew up in that milieu. He accepted all that to begin with, but eventually he could see through it. And he said that he did not deny the existence of the masters, but he denied dependence on the masters. He has denied the dependence even on a living master, a guru, because that dependence means that you are all the time referring to somebody else, and your own intelligence is stunted in that process. It makes no difference whether it's a living master or a dead master with whom you are is even more difficult to communicate. So he is not denying the concept of masters, but he's saying they are not important for you, and that this is the direct path by which you can come upon wisdom. So he in fact wanted to transform the Theosophical Society so that it came to its original purpose of the wisdom religion, which is what he has propagated, the wisdom religion. But the Theosophists at that time, in my view, didn't understand this. They thought he was ungrateful. He was rebelling against their views, and they had brought him up and so on. So it created a division. They were not free people. It created a division, and you can study all that in the development of Krishnamurti and Theosophy at that time, so that eventually they threw him out of the Theosophical Society. So that whole process was there. And he is on record saying that when I started thinking for myself, then I questioned everything that I had been told, and not just to oppose it, but to really find out what does it mean? What is this world teacher? What is masters? What is path? And so on. He went into it very deeply, and he came upon his own teaching. So I myself didn't know this until recently when Crotona invited me for 3 months to study that. And then I discovered, I read all his talks between 1922 and 1932, and where he's explaining to the Theosophists that this, you have to come to this. It has very little value to just worship that and so on. So that's my understanding of how he freed himself from the Theosophical milieu. Normally, a man like that would have grown and become president of the Theosophical Society and maintained all the tenets and heroes and do rituals and so on. So Theosophy at that time was becoming like a new religion with its own leaders, its own authorities, its own sacred books, its own rituals, just like any other religion, its own beliefs. And he repudiated that. He said, this is not religion. So he brought Theosophy back to the essence of Theosophy, which both Blavatsky and Mrs. Besant had stressed, that it's not a religion, it is the religion, the wisdom religion. And that's why they adopted the motto that truth is the highest religion. There is no religion higher than truth. So Krishnamurti wanted to bring Theosophy back to this quest for truth. But they didn't understand, and so the historical developments took place. That's my understanding. I may not be correct.
Yeah, I understand that. But I still see that the beliefs are not from Theosophy. They come from the Theosophical Society people. Theosophy itself has no belief.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's my only.
Yeah. There is a difference between Theosophy and Theosophical Society.
Yes.
That's my point.
That's right.
Savita ji, are you around? You can ask your last question. Then there will be a comment by Mr. Vijay. He wants to say something. Savita ji, please go ahead. Unmute yourself. Savita ji, unmute.
Professor Krishna, yes, I agree, and I really would follow this. Krishna ji said, let us take the direct path to wisdom. And instead of following it, he laid for us that truth is a pathless land and everyone has to find his own path and journey. And secondly, today, sir, greatly honored to take from here the learning mind that will lead to wisdom and to let me keep the spirit of everything that I'm doing involved and alive and awakened. Thank you, sir. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
My only comment is that it's not the path that creates the learning, it's the learning mind that creates the learning. On every human being is on some path, because the path is merely putting the mind through various experiences. Even the atheist is on a path. So question is, are you learning on that path, or are you just mechanically following the path? Of course, you cannot come to creativity through a mechanical observance of a path. So the learning mind is the essence of the path. Let me put it that way.
Thank you, sir. I think we can have the last comment, Mr. Vijay.
Sir, once again, sir, Krishna ji, I had a query just.
Call me Dr. Krishna just to distinguish me from, we have kept the term Krishna ji for J Krishnamurti. So it creates confusion. Yeah, thank you.
Just call Professor Krishna, that will be better.
Yes, yes, sir. So a couple of members before, I had a query going on the same lines. Krishna ji talks about once you see the entirety of the consciousness which people are living, that is, people are living divisions created by fear, the anger, the hatred, the jealousy, the identifications. Once you see the entirety of it, at that moment, there's a transformation that is possibly taking place, provided we are fully aware of that entirety of that consciousness. There's one thing that he remarked, and I have quite a few times, read him like that in his videos and dialogue sessions that we have had the facility of. The second thing that is a pointer is that, which I am also questioning, is perceptions tend to become idea again. How do we see that the perception remains free of becoming an idea? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. You can't do anything about it consciously, because if you do something consciously, you bring in the ego into operation. The problem is not all that. The problem is oneself. Therefore, there's nothing you can do consciously to get rid of that problem. You are the problem. The first observation, can you just remind me again?
Yes, sir. Once we see the entirety of the consciousness of mankind.
Yes. You see, this perception is not a partial perception. It's not like the perception of Einstein, which was in a particular field, in a particular question about space and time and energy and so on. Those insights are also have the same quality as this insight, but this insight is holistic. It has to see the falseness of the entirety of the ego field, and only then it steps out of it. Otherwise, what happens? It says one part is good, another part is bad, and I will cultivate the good part and I will eliminate the bad part. And he is saying that it is not like that. Even if you ambitiously work for a noble cause, the ambition itself is a problem, much bigger problem than your aim. So if you are building a hospital which will do good, you want to do good and therefore you want to build a hospital. If you build it ambitiously, you are creating at the same time disorder in society. So can you build that hospital with love, with compassion, not with ego? So if you work out of love, then you don't contribute to the chaos. If you work out of the ego, you contribute. But normally we are told have noble desires. And he's saying desire itself is a problem, not a question of what the aim of the desire. So that's how I understand him, that you have to have a more holistic perception. Otherwise, you're trapped in one channel.
But how
Thank you,
does
sir.
love arrive, sir? How does love arrive?
It's already there. Don't destroy it.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think we have come
Sir.
to the end of this talk now. I have to make two announcements.
Yes.
We have been receiving requests from many people that they be informed of the next Sunday's talk and all that. Let me make it clear that our Zoom link remains unchanged. So if you're joining today on that link, it will continue to be same on every Sunday. And the talks are normally at 11 o'clock every Sunday. If there is a change in the timing, we'll keep you informed. For example, next 2 Sundays, that is on 17th and 24th, our talk time will start at 9:30 a.m. because we have 2 speakers who will be joining us from the western coast of USA. So because of the timing and all that, it will be at 9:30 a.m. Next Sunday, it will be Mr. Mark Lee. And after that, it will be Dr. David Moody. So all of us are welcome to join that. And Gerard, you can also join, and our request is that you give us time where you can also address this gathering. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. So with these words, thank you, sir, once again for.
Thank you.
May I
Thank you.
request Professor Krishna? May I request Professor Krishna to be there in next Sunday lecture of Mark Tully?
You don't have to request. I myself am interested in hearing them.
Okay, thank you. Just because of your engagement with other lectures.
Okay, okay, thank you. Abhishek Pandey, you can join on the same link, sir. You don't have to worry about being informed. It remains the same.
No, but the information goes to everybody, no?
Yes, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for a nice talk, sir.
Thank you.
We are informing, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been
Thank you.
getting your information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dubey sir. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone. Please close it. Kamlesh, please close.